Wampum is a Native American art form, traditionally made of purple and white beads cut from clamshells. Now, this beautiful object had many uses for the people who created them. And if you would like to learn more about them, in the description is a link to the Onondaga Nation's website with more information about the meaning behind this work. Today, I'm going to show you how to make a small wampum, like this one. Isn't it cute? So tiny. The wampum that I am making is about 3.5 inches long and 1.5 inches tall. Now, that's not very big in wampum terms. Some of them were large enough to be worn like a belt, but this one's going to be tiny comparatively. Before I even begin weaving together the beads, I'm drawing out a pattern on graph paper first so I can plan out what I'm doing. Each square on the graph paper is going to represent one of the beads that I'm going to be putting into the wampum. I'll be creating 5 rows of beads and 10 columns for a total of 50 beads. The beads that I'm using today are larger also than what would traditionally be used. Wampum beads were carved out of clamshells using the white or purple parts of the shell, and they were not much bigger than what you would find in a craft store, labeled as a seed bead. So those are pretty tiny. The type of bead that I'm using are called pony beads, which are much bigger. But I'm going to stick to the traditional purple and white colors. For the pattern that I'm making, I'm going to be doing a simple diamond design with each end of the wampum having a stripe to give it more of a finished look. Because I'm only using 2 different colors, I only need to indicate which one of my beads will be purple with some hatching on my design. If you want to work with more than 2 colors, you can use some colored pencils or crayons or something like that to indicate your colors. And this pattern is going to be super useful as you build your wampum because it will let you know which bead you're supposed to put on next, which can get a little confusing while you're in the middle of it.
To start off, you're going to need about 6 feet of wax thread. Now, to figure this out, I'm about 6 feet tall, so I hold it from fingertip to fingertip and spread my arms out, and that allows me to kind of figure out that space. You're going to need your design, and you're going to need your beads. We start by taking a look at what is going to be our first bead, and for this it's going to be the top corner here. Sorry about the autofocus. And this one's going to be one of our purple beads. So I'm going to take a purple bead out of the bin and I'm going to put it on the string. And then we need it to stay there. We don't want it falling off. So we're going to tie it on. So just like you tie your shoes, you go under and through. We're not making a bow though, we're just double knotting this. I was told when I was a kid that this is called a granny knot, but I don't know. Somebody's grandma maybe made it up. So there we go. Double knotted. So this is going to stay on there pretty well. As long as it's pulled nice and tight, that's not going anywhere, which is what we want. Now, I'm going to take the other end of the string and I'm going to feed it back through because I want to have the string facing the right direction. I want to have all the beads lined up next to each other in a row, so I need to pull this string all the way through. One of the problems that a lot of students of mine have with this when they're working on this is the string gets kind of tangled up in the first couple of rows while we're working on this, and it gets them a little bit frustrated. Now, since I've already marked off this, or since I've already got this bead on here, a good thing to do is kind of mark off where you are. So that guy's done, and I'm going to move on to the next bead, which is going to be also a purple one. Basically, the whole first row is going to be purple. And for the first row, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 more beads. Because you put on your whole first row all at the same time. This is the only time while you're making a wampum where you add more than 1 bead at a time. Generally speaking, you're going to be putting them on one at a time, the whole time. It's just this one requires that first row to be set so you have something to kind of string your beads to, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. So there's 4 beads on the end of the string, and I'm going to mark off the ones that I put on. Zoop, 2, 3, 4. Now the next bead is going to be this one right here, and this is going to be a white bead, and we're going to go up this row as we go through our pattern. So I'm going to be putting in a whole bunch of white beads, and we're going to only add these one at a time to the string, because that's how this whole wampum is going to be put together. We've got to loop them together. So here is my 1 bead, and I want to make it so that it is on the next row here. So I'm going to kind of bend the string around just so I can kind of see what I'm doing. Makes it a little bit easier for some folks when they just turn it just so that they're next to each other. And I'm going to loop this bead to the one in the row next to it. I'm going to take the string, I'm going to go through this bead this way, and pull the string all the way through so it doesn't get too tangled up. Try to get my fingers out of your way. Zoop, zoop, zoop. Out of here. And then these 2 beads are now looped together. But my string's in the wrong spot. I need to put another bead here. So I'm going to move my string down and through this white bead, so that way my string's in the right spot for the next bead I'm going to put on. So this is going to go through here. And this is how you add a new row. Every time you go to add a new row, because you're going to be doing that a bunch of times. We're going to be doing that essentially 9 times, because we're making 10 rows here. That's how you start your next row. So that bead is on. I'm going to mark it off. Next bead is this one. That's another white one. And I'm going to put it on. Alright, so let's get slid over, and it's going to sit next to this one. Now, just like we did here, we looped these 2 beads together. We're going to loop this bead and this bead together. The ones that are next to each other, the ones that are going to sit next to each other in different rows, we want them to be looped together. So I'm going to take the string, and just like I did with the first one, I'm going to go through this bead in this row. Pull it through the purple bead, all the way through. Zoop, zoop, zoop. Saying that a lot in this video. Maybe it'll be a catchphrase, who knows. Alright, next, I'm going to take it. I have to finish the loop, so I have to take the rest of the string and go back through the white bead, because I'm making a circle, I'm making a loop. And in order to do that, I have to go all the way around, back to where I started. You can see a little bit about how the string is getting caught on the marker and the other stuff that's on the desk here. And that's going to happen your first couple of rows. But as you go further through, you're going to be eating up a lot of this string, and it's going to get less and less tangled. So this string came out of this bead and went through the purple one, down and back through the white one again, making a loop. And then you just keep doing that until you finish your whole row, making sure you keep track of what you've done as you've added the beads on, and that'll keep you in your pattern. And you put on the next bead. And we're just going to continue this for a little while. Now, one of the things that confuses some of my students is when they get to this last bead, they don't know where to put it. They don't know how to line it up with their designs, but it works the same as the other ones. This last bead, which is essentially the top bead in our next row here, because we put on this bead and this bead. Now we've got to put this one on. This top bead gets looped up with the one in the row next to it. So it's going to get looped up to that purple one. Now, my students who do this with me most of the time are 5th graders, and so maybe they get confused because of the knot, but I don't know. It seems to confound that group, but it's just the same as the other ones. You go through the end and you pull it all the way through so that they're looped up together like that. Now, when we go back to our guide, you can see we're kind of following a pattern. We go down one row and then up the next one. Well, we're going to go down this row, so that means the next bead I'm going to be adding on is this one here, which is a white bead, the one on the top of row number 3 here. I suppose they're columns. I guess it depends on which way you hold your design, right? So that one on the top there is also going to be a white bead, and this goes on the same way as that white bead we put on over here goes on. This is how we start the next row. We're just going to first put the bead, there it goes, put the bead on, and I'm going to just turn the bead around so you can kind of see where it's going to end up. I'm just bending the string, that's all, so that they're next to each other. And I'm going to loop this new bead, this new white bead here, to this white bead that I just put on. So these two are going to become looped together as pals, as they live together in the land of this wampum. Zoop, zoop, zoop. Pull it all the way through. And just like before, we've got to make sure our string is going the right way, so we can put our next bead here. So we have to take our string and go back through this white bead that we just looped on, and pull it all the way through, like that. Beautiful. And that's the 3rd row. So from here, I can mark off my next bead, which is going to be a white one, and I'm just going to continue through the pattern. Alright, so now that we're on the last bead here, we should start thinking about how we're going to tie this off, how we're going to end this wampum, because we're going to want it to stay together. Now the method that I use is not crazy sophisticated, it's just tie some knots. Tie some knots and keep it from untangling itself. So now that I've got my last bead on here, and we've got our pattern that we designed all set up there, I'm just going to go back through this last bead, making a loop around it, similar to the way that we made our first bead. Get in there. And that will make a loop that goes around the bead. But before I pull it all the way taut, I'm going to push it through the center there, kind of like I'm making a half hitch, and I'm just going to pull it nice and tight, like that. And then I'm going to sneak the string under it again, because it still has a little give to it. Now I'm going to pull that through, and now I've got another loop here that's being formed. Now I take my string and I'm going to put it through that. And I pull that nice and tight. And I'm going to do that again. Go through there. I've got this loop going on here. I'm going to go under the loop through the loop and pull it nice and tight. Now you can cut down the extra string if you have extra string. Depends on how much you had at the beginning. But if you do so, don't cut it real close to your knot. If you cut it really close to the knot, what's going to end up happening is eventually that string is going to find its way back through and this whole thing is going to start unraveling. So if you want to keep this thing for a while, give yourself some space. Gives you something to kind of hang it by anyway. And now you've got your completed wampum. Thanks for watching. Go learn, create, and inspire.
If you like this video, please hit the like button below. You can also subscribe to SterbART to be notified of the latest video uploads and to help support the channel. Keep learning, creating, and inspiring.